Elemental, some are seeing it tip over 40 million at 4,000 theaters, but its pre-sales are tracking 35 to 40% behind that of last summer's Lightyear,
Ooh.
Ooh.
which was a dud with $50.5 million. Now, Lightyear is not just a dud, it is a studio-defining failure.
Mm-hmm.
This is coming in at 35 to 40%.
The director just walked out the door.
That's exactly right. And
what?
We hate to hear that for him. Talking about Angus MacLane.
Okay,
we
sorry. Yeah, let's be clear that we're talking about the director of Lightyear.
Lightyear, yeah.
We're not quite yet to the Elemental director being walked out. We'll get there later.
Walked out the door. We have a whole different cultural issue going on at Pixar.
That is a future pro show, I'm sure. But guys, let's talk about this, okay? The Good Dinosaur. It is largely seen as the worst box office dud that Pixar ever produced, right?
Mm-hmm.
When adjusted for inflation, The Good Dinosaur is beating this film in terms of people going and sitting in the theater by about 50%. That is how bad this is. So I'm just going to turn it to you guys. Let's go deep here. Philosophically, what is happening? Where have the families gone? Why will they not go see something with the word Disney slapped on it? I swear to you, there was a time when you could have done a papier-mâché reboot of the Wuzzles and made $100 million. And you can't do anything now as Disney and make a profit. What has happened?
Well, I personally think it's like multiple things have just collided and hit at the same time. So you had them after 2016, everyone decided to go to begin to push their propaganda, their ideology into their movies. And as those movies begin to, keep coming out, then you have COVID and everything shuts down for basically a year. And then they're already full swing into that. So then they keep producing those type things, which we had already kind of rejected at that point. Plus, during COVID, people kind of got out of the habit of going to see the movies. Then the economy has tanked. And now people are a little tighter on what they're willing to spend money on. And not to mention, this movie will probably hit Disney Plus in about 45 days anyways. So maybe just stay home and wait for that. And not to mention then us knowing what Disney is trying to push on children, it's just all together. I think it's just been, I think everything has come together to why it is what it is.
We're about to talk about The Flash. The Flash is coming in extraordinarily low, $70 million. We don't even want to talk about the budget on this thing. It has been in production since what, 2015? Now, usually when a film comes in low, then the competition rises. What we're looking at is that in prime time, the second half of June, going into Independence Day, that despite the fact The Flash has no support, essentially, this is a Pixar film that is not rising at all. Neither of these films are rising. They are both sinking. Matt, how can it be?
Well, I think in the case of Elemental, it's a marketing issue. Disney did not put any marketing dollars behind Elemental. My guess is that in addition to their austerity, measures, firing a bunch of people, trying to tighten the belts, they had some internal test screenings or reviews or something like that told them that this was not going to be a hit. And so they chose not to put too much marketing behind this movie and just kind of like let it die on the vine, essentially take the L. Because honestly, I haven't seen any marketing for this thing. I barely knew that it was even coming out until like the news of like the disappointment hit. This is not a Pixar property that is legacy. It's not like a Toy Story or an Incredibles or anything like that. So it's just kind of like, par for the course, especially considering that Pixar's track record hasn't been all that great lately. And so Disney probably just decided, you know what, we're just going to feed this into our streaming service. It's going to be more content for the kiddies. And we're not going to be spending more than we have to on a theatrical release. Matt,
what's the last Pixar film that you think was a true success? I know the answer to this, but I'm just curious because perception of Pixar, it's hard to imagine how long it's been since they had a real financial success. But when's the last one you believe was a financial win for Pixar?
I think it was either, I forget which one came out afterwards. It was either Toy Story 4 or The Incredibles 2. One of those two, I think. I could be wrong. I don't really pay much attention to Pixar, but I know that Disney's animation arm, in addition to Pixar, has not been performing well lately, and so they're probably pulling back investing in it going forward, especially considering the fact that theaters haven't fully recovered from the COVID stuff. So I think most studios are looking at theaters as bonus revenue right now, but it's not like it used to be, you know. So I think that the simple explanation for the underperformance of Elemental is just the fact that Disney has refused to market it or failed to market it, and they probably put that marketing money behind Indiana Jones, to tell you the truth.
Mhm.
So you actually nailed that trivia question. It is indeed Toy Story 4. It has been 4 years, all the way back to 2019, since Pixar had a major financial win.
Yeah, I'm wicked
That's what we're
smart.
talking about. John, I have a thesis here that families are actually intentionally avoiding Disney movies now. Is that your take on it? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I think what Michelle said was pretty much accurate. All the forces coming together, and I do think that what happened in Florida with when Bob Jacob was in charge, and then Bob Iger coming in and basically doubling down on it, I think definitely turned people away from the Walt Disney Company, especially with their films and the messaging in those films. So I think that's an accurate thesis.
We look at what has happened with major American corporations as of late. Of course, Starbucks now, seen often as one of the most quote unquote progressive corporations in America, that they have diminished their displays of controversial content in the month of June. I'm dancing around that as best I can. But we've seen alcoholic beverage companies really take a beating when it comes to divisive marketing. We've seen big box retailers suffering. But I have a thesis that this actually began before any of them. I think Disney was the beginning of the battleground. I think that Lightyear was the start of all this.
No,
I'm
I
curious if
disagree
you
with that.
believe that.
Sorry, go ahead, John. You were the one that was supposed to answer that question.
Jonas is eager. We'll get to you in just a moment, Jonas.
I think that might have been a tipping point, but I think this battle started way before that. I mean, you could probably go back to Gamergate if you want to talk. If really want to go back to that. I mean, it's probably been an ongoing battle for a long time now throughout the history of the United States. But I mean, looking at the current thing, yeah, I think Lightyear is definitely a tipping point in that. But I still think I would rather point to February in Florida with Bob Chapek's comments. Warring with the governor of Florida, warring with the state of Florida, I think was probably a bigger point. And then the battle that the effects of that were Lightyear. So that's where I would point is February in Florida, and Bob Chapek basically saying, even before he said that he was coming out against the bill, he said that we are going to go around bills like this through our content and push what's in that bill through the content, that what the bill is trying to stop through the content.
Absolutely. Now, Jonas, you had a thought on this one?
Yep. So I would say that I'd say Lightyear and the Florida situation in February was the tipping point. But I saw a lot of parents start to go, "Hey, something's wrong here," around the premiere of Turning Red.
Mm-hmm.
There were
That's
a lot
good
of
point too.
There were a lot of parents that tuned in to watch that movie, and it's ostensibly not that bad as far as traditional standards go. But the references to feminine hygiene products, the little girl twerking as a panda,
to defeat the villain who is her mother.
right? And in the end, it turns out that the mother was the one who was incorrect.
That didn't go over so well with families, I would say.
Yes.
All right.
So
let's go to Michelle, though. Michelle,
Mm-hmm.
give us your full analysis of this. Was Disney the powder keg that lit the fuse for all of this culture war pendulum shifting that we see? Did it give courage to families to begin taking whatever position? And by the way, I'm not here taking a position on this. I'm being very careful to remain above the fray, although I do personally have positions on it. But do you think that this was the start of the backlash?
Yes, and I think Disney really is the start of even just the backlash from fans in general. And I know people go to Ghostbusters 2016, but that doesn't hold anything compared to the backlash of 2017's The Last Jedi, which
Well,
began
let me
to
ask you
wake.
this, Michelle. Ghostbusters 2016, was that the first time that Hollywood attempted to go in this woke direction?
That was like the first bit, that was kind of like what kickstarted it. And then I would say The Last Jedi just kind of began to break people.
And then they
Uh,
didn't like the way that fans responded. That
yes.
angered them.
Yes, it angered them, and that's when all the names started, and they've doubled down. But I think you could be right. Again, he said, was it Turning Red or whatever?
Mhm.
But I do think Lightyear, it was like Lightyear with that, what they put in it, and then those videos coming out of them telling what they want to do. I think it really did
Yeah,
just,
reimagined
it
time.
shifted something massively.
Do you think that Disney was sort of the beginning of all of this, the big movement, right? In the past, these kinds of consternations that conservatives, moderates, traditionalists would have would quickly sort of evaporate for whatever reason. Perhaps that was censorship, we don't know. But in this case, it hasn't. And it's growing and growing. Do you think it began with the pushback against Disney?
I wouldn't say it began with the pushback of Disney, but it got multiplied by a factor of 10 because of Disney, because of how big Disney is, how much Disney has their tentacles into everything. That it was the one thing I would say where it was a big enough target where people were like, okay, you know what? Forget it. This is where the line is crossed with this particular company, especially when you have a company who for decades, I'll say maybe we won't say we'll take away the last like 10 years. We'll say 90 years has been ubiquitous with family entertainment that you felt was safe enough that you could park your kids in front of, not only just your kids, but that the whole family could sit there and watch. And you would actually learn some moral lessons, just something that just wasn't out to offend everybody, that was there just to entertain everybody. But once Disney started to basically bite the hand feeding them, some of us hands didn't appreciate that.
There's a
Well, so
word that I used to hear all the time talking about Disney, and it was timeless.
So those are all great points. Stephen, I want to come to you in just a moment, but what Lorena said, I've got to go to Jonas for a bit of expertise here. Jonas, you've got insight on exactly what Lorena was talking about. Families at one time would put their kids in front of the TV knowing that Disney would take care of them. They didn't have to worry about having a parental lesson afterwards. You know about the censorship of Bear in the Big Blue House, not a very old children's program.
Oh, that's right.
It's only 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And yet when it came back to Disney Plus, Disney would not allow particular episodes and parts of episodes to air. So Jonas, how has Disney changed? What was it they wouldn't let allow come on Disney Plus via Bear in the Big Blue House? The
one of my
highly
first
controversial
investigations.
show.
Yeah, one of my first investigations for that Park Place. Just you look at Bear in the Big Blue House, which I had been waiting for a very long time. I feel like this is a show that is in the tradition of Fred Rogers, the stop and smell roses. You know, it's okay to have feelings, that kind of thing. Equipping children to talk about situations. You got this wonderful character, and a surprising number of episodes were missing when it finally made it to Disney Plus. And I thought, what is going on here? So through a little sleuthing, maybe sailing the seas, I found those episodes. And there was an episode, I forget the name of the episode, but it was all about working and what it's like to be a bear. And Bear says the words, "A bear is not a bear who does not work to gather berries." And then
That is
sings
a
a
real
song
problem.
about mom and dad
What?
roles. And that was the episode that I guess Disney Plus deemed to be too spicy to present to children, to say that a dad might go to work and that a mom might cook, or that they might work together to raise a family. Yeah,
It's a
Disney
real
didn't like
problem.
that.
But did they keep the potty training episode though? That's what I want to know.
I've watched a lot of Disney children's content lately, and it can get a little mind numbing. But no, I don't recall whether or not there was a potty training episode.
Come on, Jonas. What do we pay you for? Come on, get on it. Be an investigative reporter.
I would assume he goes in the woods, though.
I'm here to advocate for Disney to simply be apolitical. We want universal truths that the vast majority of families can support. We want that out of all studios. Why in the world do we think Mario was so successful? Because families knew they could trust Nintendo.